How many times have you seen people do this banded pull-apart activity like this to recruit their upper back muscles to either improve their posture and or warm up for exercises in the gym like bench presses or upper body pressing activities? I'm going to get into why this isn't necessarily an ideal exercise for shoulder health and stability and what might be a better alternative. As I've mentioned in much of my other content on my channel, the scapula is this naturally rounded or concave structure that needs to sit on a thoracic spine that has some degree of curvature to it as well, or kyphosis, because that is what the normal human spine is made up of. Different curves evening themselves out in this S-shaped curve. So this part right here should have some degree of pushing out or convexity to allow for that concave scapula to glide on it nice and smoothly. If there is compression or tightness or flattening of that area, then the scapula can't really glide and do its job very effectively. The humerus and the scapula have inherently coupled motion. When one moves, the other is going to accommodate for that. Now, it's important that they maintain this relationship. And a lot of times when people do these banded pull-aparts, they're just shoving their scapula against their rib cage and not allowing for the proper coupled motions. I've seen enough videos on the internet and been to enough commercial gyms to see how this is often executed. Most of the times people will grab the band like this and they'll shove their chest towards the band like so. And they'll feel the muscles on the back of their rib cage and scapula working, but really what they're doing is they're just shoving their rib cage forward in space and not actually getting the right motions of the scapula working with the rib cage and also the musculature associated with that. What you're seeing is them just doing this, shoving the rib cage forward and compressing their back, shoving the rib cage forward and compressing their back. What you would ideally see is you would see external rotation of the scapula and downward rotation of the scapula. But people aren't getting that because what's happening is that the rib cage is moving on the scapula. This is the thing that is promoting the movement, and their scapula is just along for the ride. So the scapula gets compressed against the rib cage, and the rib cage is basically stuck in this extended position because they're flattening this area out. And that's not necessarily ideal. Now, some of you may be asking, wait, Connor, isn't it ideal for you to compress your scapula against your spine and squeeze your shoulder blades together if you're doing something like a barbell bench press? And my answer would actually be no, unless the load is really, really heavy or you're something like a power lifter and you really need to restrict your range of motion. Most people do upper body pressing exercises to recruit their pecs. And in order to recruit your pecs have to shorten, right? And in order for your pecs to shorten, they need to create adduction and also internal rotation of the humerus. So what that means is your humerus needs to rotate in like this and come across your body to a certain extent. Now, in order for that to happen, your scapula actually needs to wrap around your rib cage and go into protraction. So if your goal is to grow your pecs, then keeping your shoulder blades squeezed back together makes absolutely no sense. We would want some degree of protraction. I'm not saying shove your shoulder forward like this, but what I am saying is that maybe feeling the space between your scapula and your spine resting on that bench would be an ideal position to allow your scapula to get a little bit of movement. And that would allow for better protraction and a deduction of the humerus mechanics. But that's a little bit of a tangent. Let's get back to the main idea of how can we use a banded pull-apart activity to help improve posture and shoulder health? Well, we can start by appreciating that we need this back rib cage area to be able to expand when we inhale. When we inhale, we should get some expansion of the back ribs and the front ribs. There should be 360-degree expansion of the rib cage. If there's a lot of compression in the back rib cage, we're not going to be getting that, and we're going to be shoving air into our bellies forward. These are usually people that have a lot of anterior pelvic tilt and their rib cage shoved forward in space. So we want to appreciate that there should be some degree of flexion of the thoracic spine. We also want to get the scapula in a position where it is externally rotated and slightly downwardly rotated on that nice degree of thoracic flexion. Not too much, but enough to maintain a proper concave-convex relationship. Improving the relationship of how the scapula and the rib cage and the humerus work together and patterning that with exercises over time that are progressed to allow for these changes to stick is a main priority of my shoulder health program and my beginner body restoration program. You can learn more about those in the description down below. So if we can do that and breathe through that, we're not only improving our breathing and rib cage dynamics, but we're also getting the scapula in a position that is specific to that. And that should carry over to way better shoulder health because we're appreciating all the things that go into that, but also it should help you feel a little bit taller within your posture. Because when you inhale, you should get a little bit taller. And when you exhale, you should get a little bit shorter. These are subtle movements, but getting expansion of the back rib cage will allow you to open up that space, and that will allow you to then get just a slight bit taller upon inhalation, as opposed to just shoving the air forward, which is what a lot of people do. So here's an exercise that you can do that would be a nice alternative. One way you can do that is in a seated position with a desk, or I'm using a box because I'm in a gym, but a desk would work just fine. And you want to be at a 90-degree angle at both your knees and your hips, and you want to feel your sit bones nice and evenly on both sides. Get a really light band. I'm using a yellow band here. Doesn't need to be much more strong than this. And you want to get in a position where you have less than about a 60-degree angle of your humerus relative to your trunk. So this angle right here should be about 60 degrees or less. If this is 90 right here-ish, you want to be right about here. Now, maintaining your elbows shoulder width apart, slightly move your hands outside of your shoulders, and you're going to feel some muscles on the back of your scaps engage. Shouldn't be overly crazy. It should just be subtle. Now maintain this rib cage push back position and exhale through your mouth fully, as if you're sighing the air out. You want to fully exhale for about 5 to 10 seconds, literally, until you feel a little bit of ab engagement of your side abs, your obliques. Maintain that compression in your side abs, just about 3 out of 10, and then close your mouth. Inhale through your nose, and you're going to feel your back expand with air, and it should feel really nice. So a full rep would look like this. Feeling my sit bones tall, push the ribs back, out a little bit. Generally, you should feel like the inhale is pretty silent. You could also do this standing against a wall. So you want to get about 6-ish inches away from the wall, feet straight ahead, hip width apart, slight bend in your knees. So that way you can feel your pelvis. If it was a bowl of water, it's not spilling out the front or the back. It's nice and neutral. Forearms and back of the palms on the wall, and maintain, again, less than a 60-degree angle. Just push back a little bit, go out, and then breathe again, just like we did on the last one seated.